Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 Zero Waste Festival, to our very first masterclass on food waste, towards zero food waste. I wish to begin by acknowledging Ngunnawal people, traditional owners of the land in which we're broadcasting to you today. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the continuing contribution that Ngunnawal culture makes to this beautiful city of Canberra and our gorgeous region. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to have you all here today to talk about zero food waste. My name's Mia Swainson. I'm the host of today, and I'm also chair of Zero Waste Revolution. We're just a very small volunteer-run Canberra-based community organisation. There's a small handful of us, and we are passionate about supporting people to take the next step towards zero waste in their life, wherever that might be. And today's talk is about food waste, and I have the fabulous Ryan Langu with me today. Ryan is the Centre Director for the Canberra Environment Centre, which is actually where we're broadcasting to you from. He started his career actually as an investment banker and decided, like so many people often feel with their lives, that you wanted more meaning and to make a real contribution to the planet. And so here he is here at the Canberra Environment Centre. He's a passionate local food advocate. He completed his Masters in Research in Environmental Management at the ANU just 1 or 2 years ago now. 2 years ago now. And we're not working with the Canberra community to help us to be more sustainable. He can be found in his home veggie patch with several chickens, 2 Australian kelpies, and just recently a swarm of bees.
I'm new to the urban beekeeping, or the rural beekeeping in my case.
Yeah, I can't wait to taste that honey.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? We're talking about food today, and really where I come to food from is the more local it is, the better. The better for you, the less waste involved, better for the environment. And food is something that we all have in common. We all need to eat. We've probably already eaten today, and food means many different things to different people for different reasons. It might be that food connects you to a home place far away or to a family tradition. It might be that food is family time in your home, or food might be your medicine. It might be your comfort, but we all eat food. So food waste is all our problem, and we can all make the change. Really, the only way for us to tackle food waste, and we're going to get into why it is a problem, but it's for each of our individual households to make a change. And I'm going to start by confessing that I'm not perfect at food waste, Mia.
Nor am I.
And we've heard from last night, I know you've heard from a lot of really inspirational zero waste people. But I just want to tell everyone that I'm not perfect at it. And I hold those people up as an inspiration. But really, we just need everyone to just start somewhere.
Beautiful.
And to get going.
You know, Jackie French in last night's address talked about how she was a terrible gardener, but a fantastic garden writer. And she said, you know, I wouldn't be a good garden writer if I was good at gardening.
That's true. Yeah. Got a bit of that. But it's all just, I think that's why I have so much to share on this, is because I'm constantly learning and trying. But yeah, not everything's perfect in my household, and it's probably not in yours, but that doesn't discourage me from trying every day to do a bit more.
That's great. Look, before we get into it, can I just share some little housekeeping things with people? This is a webinar format, even though it's a masterclass. So you can interact with us using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Type in a question, and if someone has typed in a question and you connect with that question or you'd like it answered, we do the thumbs up on that question. And we've actually just got something in there saying the audio is not clear, so we'll do our best to improve our audio here.
Yeah.
Hopefully that is a little bit better.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah.
All right, well, let's start talking now about why food waste is a problem.
Over to you.
Yeah, well, food waste is actually a huge problem. 1/3 of all the food we produce globally is wasted. And when I first heard that figure, I was pretty blown away, and I'm still blown away every time I say it. 1/3 of the food we produce, and so that means all the fresh water that was used to grow that food, all the energy that was used, people's efforts, the embodied emissions in transporting and refrigerating food, for all of that to just end up in most of the time back into landfill is an incredible waste and a huge problem. And all of our problems, really, all of us that eat, all of us that buy food. And so that number, and just while we keep going, that means that if, so 1/3 of it's wasted, that makes 8% of global emissions come from that food waste. So it is actually a big deal.
Wow.
That 8% would mean that if food waste were a country, it would be the third largest emitter behind USA, China, and then food waste.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty big deal. In Australia, we've got that figure a little bit lower, but we still on average throw out 1 in 5 bags of groceries that we buy, which is a waste of our money as much as it is a waste of everyone's efforts, and just terrible for the environment. In a dollar figure, it's something around $3,000 average per household per year that we're throwing away, and that's money that you're going out to work for, to go buy the food. Again, such a shame that it should end up going to landfill when it could be eaten. And so we describe food waste as any food that was made to be eaten by a human that isn't. And so it's really great. We're going to talk about composting and worm farming and chickens later on, but really, even though it's great to feed that to them when we're not going to use it ourselves, it was made for us, and so we should be eating it. So there's lots of little tricks that we can do to get to this point, and we're going to get there today. Some of it seems like quite simple stuff, but our food system is broken, really, the way that we deal with food, obviously, or else we wouldn't be wasting 1/3 of it. So we just need to make little simple behavioural changes to try and get out of this problem altogether. All right. Why is food waste a problem in landfill? We might just touch on that as well first. Essentially, when you put food waste in your red bin, it ends up in the landfill where it's suffocated by plastic. So normally, any organic material would break down naturally, as things do on the forest floor. But when it's surrounded by plastic, all the oxygen is taken out and it releases methane. So methane is one of our big greenhouse gases, one of the dangerous greenhouse gases.
So 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide.
Yeah, right.
It is, and it's the same stuff that cows fart.
There you go. So we're going to talk about keeping the food out of landfill, but that's actually pretty low on the scale. There's things we can do before that to make sure that we don't waste food. And I've got a few little slides to show. We might start. There is. Yes. All right, so it's going to go full screen there. And play the slideshow. All right. So we can see here that primary production is responsible for a lot of the food waste. Manufacturing is actually responsible for a lot of the primary production food waste because of a lot of the stuff in the bigger supermarkets gets rejected from primary producers. But we can see over here that households play a huge part in the food waste problem. And so we can't really blame anyone else. And so no one else can really change it apart from us. And if we look at this kind of production scheme, we can it's intuitive to think that anything that's coming to us locally is going to have less chance for it to be spoiled in between reaching us from where it's come from. And so I guess if you go into the supermarket and the next time you're in the fresh food area, you're having a look, most of the labels will tell you where something is produced. And you might be surprised if you've never looked before to learn that at different times of the year, asparagus might come from Argentina, I think it is. We're getting garlic from China, oranges from California, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be sending fresh food all around the world like that. So one way that we can have a big impact on this primary production and manufacturing sector is just choosing to buy as local as possible. And so this might mean you actually have to look at changing your diet a little bit as well, because when you're going to buy things as local as possible, you're going to find that things are not always in season and they're not always available. And so say this time of year, it's a bit of a gap But come January, February, there's going to be heaps of tomatoes in the shop, and they're all going to be very cheap because there's lots of them. What's there at the moment? Asparagus, I guess.
Lots of asparagus,
Yeah.
broad beans.
Broad beans.
I shop at the farmers market, and I think fruit is probably the thing I notice more than anything in terms of seasonality.
Yep.
Like I can get tomatoes all year round at the farmers market.
Mhm.
They're grown in those massive feed sheds. It just between Canberra and Sydney.
Yep.
So I know because I talked to Sandra and Borhan, who supply me with tomatoes.
Yep.
And strawberries. They do year round as well. Same way. Not so environmental,
Yep.
in terms of getting them those other times of year, but you tend to get them. But the things I can't get year round are things like avocados. I can't get them year round,
Yep.
and the diversity in fruit. So in the winter time at the farmers market, it's apples and pears.
Yeah,
sort of.
that's
Not
true.
much else.
Yeah, and so you're just eating what's in season, what's there.
Yeah, I mean, we do supplement it definitely.
Sure.
And the bananas come down from Coffee, so
Yep.
I think they come down year round. Yeah, I'm not totally sure actually.
Yeah, they do. Look, yeah.
Yeah.
We're pretty much getting bananas year round from up north.
Yeah, but from Coffs Harbour rather than Far North Queensland.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
yeah, and I can't remember the guy's name who drives them down, but since with coronavirus, he's had a shortage of people working on his farm, and so he's like, doing everything himself.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy process, and driving the truck down to Canberra.
Yeah.
But I think there's less waste, because it comes straight from the farmer.
That's right. If you can actually talk to the people who produce the food, you know exactly how it's been produced, you know where it's come from, and that's where this value, I guess, comes from, right? Anyone that's ever grown any food before knows how much energy goes into growing that, right? And if you've spent all that time to grow something, it's very likely that you're going to try and use every single part of it before you get it needs to go. And so even if you can't grow all of your food, the closer you can be with the people who are growing it, then the more connection you have with it, the less likely you're going to waste it, because it disrespects the person that's grown it. If you don't know that person, no, yeah.
Yeah. So what would be your top tips for getting food that is locally produced?
I would say look outside the market is the first place that I think of. I think a lot of the problems that we have, like we keep looking at this graph, is that we've commoditized food. We've made food a commodity. And that means that the focus isn't necessarily on quality, it's on price. And so a great way to step around that is to grow some of your own, to trade with your neighbours, to look for wild foods. In Canberra in particular, in February, there's apples everywhere, things like that. We run workshops here on foraging weeds. So anything that you take outside of the market's automatically pretty much close to zero waste, because it was going to go to waste most of the time anyway.
Yeah.
So that's a great start. But then after that, obviously the local farmers markets are a great place to start. You can form relationships with people there, and you might find there's a small but growing sector of community supported agriculture. So that's where you make an agreement with a farmer and you pay up front, perhaps by the quarter, and they'll give you what they can. And in good times, they'll give you heaps, and at times of perhaps a bit less abundance, then they'll give you what they have.
My neighbours signed into one of those things. They get a box of fruit and veggies every week.
Yep.
But they've paid, upfront, and it's all seasonal, and it's produced by a local farm. So who's doing that in Canberra?
I think every single person that's doing it is pretty much oversubscribed at the moment. So any aspiring farmers out there, there's definitely room. I know there's some people starting some urban farms in Canberra. I think the Ainslie urban farm is actually one of the ones that might be open for sign-ups at the moment, and they need help with doing great things.
Yeah, we might see if some of that, we've got some researchers here with us, we might see if they can look into it and pop it in the chat line for us.
Definitely.
Later in the thing.
Yeah, that's a great idea. No, we can take that screen down now. Well, let's see what we've got on here next. Let's talk about a bit of the food waste. So let's get into the household stuff, because we do need to get through a few things.
All right.
And we can stop there. The first thing to do is to have a look at how much food waste is actually being produced in your house. And that's the first place. So we need to change anything, we need to slow down enough to see what we're actually doing. And the simplest way to do that is just a household food waste audit, which is as simple as setting up a bin or a bucket next to your, either if you're putting your food scraps in the red bin or if you're putting them in the compost bin, wherever you're putting them in this bucket for a week. And just with a piece of paper.
That smells.
You could put it in the fridge or the freezer if you wanted. It shouldn't smell too much. You could empty it each day and just make a note of how many buckets. I'm sure you could figure out how to work around for the smell.
Okay.
But it's just as simple as, in whichever way it works for you, keeping track just for 1 week of what you're throwing out in terms of food that you could have eaten.
Yeah.
And so this will give you an opportunity to narrow in on where you are wasting the most food. You might find that breakfast time is a really wasteful time in your home, or you might find that Wednesday evenings is when you have the greatest amount of food waste. And so then you can really drill down, focus on those areas and start to make some changes.
What do you reckon?
Yeah.
Have you done one in your house?
I have, and I will admit that I'm not perfect at
Yeah.
all. I do like the fact that my chickens and my worms and my compost bin, which goes into the veggie garden, does get the food scraps. But really, I did an audit, and since then I've changed a lot because I was realizing that, again, like the energy that's going into producing this food, the energy of myself to go and earn the money, all that kind of stuff. It was, yeah. What about your household?
Yeah, so we looked at, I did a quick mental food waste audit.
Mm-hmm.
We have chickens, so I don't feel super guilty, but I really do go with that principle of yours, of if it was produced for humans, we should be consumed by humans.
Yep.
I have 3 boys, 6, 9 and 11.
Yep.
And I wish I could say they ate the food that I made for them, but they don't.
No.
And so a lot of a couple of sources of food waste, like breakfast, often we're getting better, but often the kids will pour themselves too much music, and it'll just end up with the chicken.
Yep.
The other bit of food waste is just, like lunch, I don't know, just anyway.
Yeah.
You name it.
Yep.
They'll eat half a pear in their lunchbox, come home, and it'll be just too revolting to rescue.
Yeah. And that'll happen a lot with kids, won't it?
Yeah.
But,
so I find that really, I find it hard. I don't feel as guilty because of the chickens, but I still do wonder about how I work with them to educate them about how important it is to value that
There's
food.
some ways around it. Obviously, a child is only going to eat what they like to eat. And so if you're giving kids something and they're bringing it back repeatedly, either half eaten or not eaten at all, chances are they might not like it, and you can swap it out with something else now.
Good advice, but after you have kids, you'll find that what they like one week is different to what they like the next week.
Yeah.
So butter chicken has worked in our house for a while, really consistently.
Yeah.
But like green pancakes works for a week, doesn't it? Rice noodles works for.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's only so much you can do. At least in the home, there are more things you can do, say around dinner time. Portion control is a big one. Yeah. And so essentially allowing your kids to feed themselves at dinner time, rather than put the food on their own plate. They can decide how hungry they are.
Really?
Well, maybe.
That totally does not work in my house.
Okay.
It might work. Yeah, that's the theory.
Okay, so
my children pour like this massive plate.
No, don't need it. Okay, so
that's
you might
really
be
consistent.
doing the opposite and feeding them a small amount at a time and making
no
sure
more.
they get through it all. But okay, so potentially.
I wish they had the self-awareness. Maybe I'm not a very good parent.
No, I think you're probably doing all right, I'd say. But I guess
that's a good idea, though.
It's important to think about the portions because it's often, it's something that we rush when we've gone through the effort of procuring the food, of cooking the food, and before we eat it, we just throw it on the plate without thinking about how much each person might eat. But even before all of that, let's get back to shopping because I've done a bit of research recently into food waste for the Love Food Hate Waste program. Yeah. And what I learned was that the main point of whether people waste food or not is in the supermarket. Believe it or not, that's the main crux point of where we get things wrong. And so whether it's the supermarket or the farmer's market or wherever you're doing your shopping, if you don't plan your meals out, chances are you're going to end up with waste or you're going to have things that you didn't expect to have and you don't know what to do with. And so we don't have to be plan our whole lives out to the minute or to the second, but we could try planning 3 meals a week, involve people in the household so that they're planning things that they like to eat.
That's a really good tip. In terms of involving the children in their meal planning.
Yeah.
My challenge is that they just choose pizza and pasta.
So they get to choose once, maybe?
Yeah, and that's where we've gone.
Yeah. And that's
they
great.
get a couple, probably once per kid.
Yeah. So at least you know what you're going to buy, whether it's healthy for them or not, it's another conversation. But you know what you're buying, right? And you know it's going to get eaten.
Yeah.
And so once you've got your plan, you can write your shopping list. And so the trick is to never go to the shops without a shopping list. And so people keep shopping lists in lots of different ways. You can keep them on a piece of paper, which I often do and often forget, which can be a problem. You can keep them on your phone. We've recently learned about a whole new range of apps that are available for people to download on their phone that can do the shopping for you, or can do a shopping list for you. The various supermarkets often have different ones that can even direct you to what aisle something is in, which is actually really important, even though it sounds silly, because when we're in that supermarket, the less time we spend in there, the less likely we are to walk out with things that we don't need or that we didn't plan for. So trick is take a list with you, don't deviate from the list, don't buy anything you don't have a plan for, or else you're going to end up,
Can I offer, ask the question next?
Yeah.
How often have you meal planned?
I'm perhaps not a perfect meal planner. I like to go a little bit more spontaneously, but I also grow a lot of food, and so I like to try and cook with whatever is looking the best in the garden, and I'll supplement it with a bit of protein from the top. So I would say I'm not the best at it.
I've been through different phases of life where I've ruthlessly meal planned. We're not quite at that at the moment. I probably would meal plan before I shop 2 or 3 meals, and the others are like the standards that I know the kids like and will eat. 3 or 4 nights a week are quite planned, and my husband doesn't like to plan, so I have to have something that I bought that he can cook with that is, and without. So we found that when we planned, it was quite tricky because, he would, he would sometimes take something I wanted for later in the week. Anyway. So
it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just about being aware.
So what I found also was that at the end of each week, because I shop every Saturday morning at the farmers market, is that Friday nights are an everything cook-up night. So that was my way of any vegetable left in the fridge, and it still is the case. Every Friday night I'll just roast it or cook it on the grill, and that's the night that we have everything vegetables.
And that's a great plan as well. Just to use everything kind of nice. And I think that's something really important you said there is that shopping once a week thing, because that means that you have what you have for the week, right? And a big thing around these values around food, and I think part of the problem with our modern world is that we have way too many choices when it comes to food. And so we'll find ourselves saying, what do I feel like tonight? It's like you might have had a Mediterranean meal, and all of a sudden tomorrow night you're going to have a laksa or something like that. And that's not how our ancestors ate. It's not really the way that we should be eating. It should be what's available.
Yeah.
What have you got left, or what is in season? Not what do I feel like that takes 15 ingredients that I'm going to buy and then end up throwing half them out.
Awesome. Hey, I just want to give a shout out. We've got quite a few comments around the audio to let you know. We've got a couple of people working with us behind the scenes, who are doing their best to adjust the audio and get that looking clear for you. So apologies if we haven't acknowledged it earlier, but just wanting you to know we've got people working on it to help make it clear.
I can move closer to the mic.
We might also move slightly closer to the mic and see if that helps.
No problemo. All right, so use what you have rather than necessarily always what you feel like. Food is a source of energy for us, rather than potentially a fun thing all the time, if you know what I mean. It's important to have fun with your food, but also if you have something there, you should probably eat it before you go and decide to grab something else. So that was, it's really important when you're in the supermarket to know what you're after and to get out of there as quickly as possible.
Or shop online.
Or shop online, another great way to do it,
Yeah.
as long as you have a plan for the things you're buying. Don't just buy it because it's on special, or there's this and that.
I just go to everything I've ever bought before. Like, so
That's a great way to
I
do it
shop
too.
on, so I go to the farmer's market and I shop online
Mhm.
with the when it's Coles or Woolies, and I'll just go to everything I bought before, click, 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 and then I have a list on the fridge and I add
Perfect.
to it.
That's
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the other hack is that chances are if you've bought something once, you're going to want it again. So you can
Yeah.
refer to your old list and
Yeah.
just get a bit of an idea. But everyone's going to have their different way of doing this. It's just about being aware rather than just wandering in there with no plan. Got to do some shopping. What am I going to get? That's when you're going to buy things that potentially will go to waste.
Yeah.
But we can move on from there because once you've taken it from the supermarket and hopefully, which was talked about last night and we talked about again, you've done so with using as little plastic as possible.
Yep.
Another big problem, and it's all related, of course. But once you get home, then there's another really important point, and that's how you store the food. Because if you don't store it properly, it's going to go off quicker than it would have. So our job, once we get our food home, is to make it last as long as possible. Keep it as fresh as possible. And the easiest way to do that is in the fridge. Most things keep really well in the fridge. Fridges need to be below 5 degrees Celsius to be their most effective, which is worth checking to make sure your fridge is cold enough. And storing things in airtight containers is the best way to make them last in the fridge. And so if you've got fresh vegetables, you might cut them, put a piece of paper towel down and store them. Anything that you're not going to use in the next couple of days, particularly when it comes to things like meats, if you're eating meat, should probably go in the freezer, which is your second best tool when it comes to storing food, because food lasts a really long time in the freezer. Many things last 6 months, 8 months. Obviously, if you're leaving it in there that long, you probably didn't need it in the first place. But it's a great place to store things. Do you know what the most wasted food that we have is? Bread.
Bread.
Yeah. And so bread is an easy one to store in the fridge, in the freezer. If you like fresh bread, you might find that you need to cut it in half, keep half out and half in the fridge or freezer. But it's actually by far the biggest thing we waste. And a lot of energy goes into producing bread as well.
So we freeze the crusts of our bread and then I'll collect them up, and then when I've got heaps of them, I'll then bring them out of the freezer, cover them with olive oil and salt.
Amazing.
Chop them up into sort of finger-shaped ones, and we have them, like they're a bit like croutons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so they're not super healthy, but yeah, I wonder if we got anyone in our audience who's got some tips for sort of ways that they've cooked or used food at home.
Yep.
Like the bread crust. Some ways to give food second life.
Yeah, please tell us your tips.
Please grab your tips, and we'd love to hear from you.
Because you've touched on something else really important there, is just using everything that you have. Pretty much everything. A lot of the fruit and vegetables that we buy or grow or wherever we get them from can actually use the whole vegetable, and we only have been taught to use little parts of it. And obviously we can't go through everything here today in a short time frame, but it's worth looking into yourself as to like things like celery leaves, traditionally not eaten but really delicious.
Oh my gosh, so good in soups and and I also not so conventional. I will sprinkle in a little bit like a herb on roast veggies just to give a little bit more flavour.
Brilliant. So worth looking into. And whilst we're on the storing, there's also everything's actually stored differently. So I did mention the fridge, but obviously you can't just throw everything in the fridge. And we've got some resources on our website, and the ACT government actually has some great resources on their website that has the information of what is best to store which vegetable. But some really important ones are bananas. Like you mentioned, bananas make other fruit ripen quicker, so they make things go off. So bananas are best stored in isolation. And the other ones are onions. They'll do a similar thing, particularly to potatoes. So potatoes and onions both like cool, dark places to be stored. So you put them in the cupboard. But if you put them in the cupboard together, the onions are going to make the potatoes go up quicker, sprout quicker.
I didn't know that because I keep my onions and potatoes together.
Probably.
And I do use them pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll think about storing them separately now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There you go. You're very welcome. Yeah. So important how you store it, important to know how to store what. We mentioned the fridge and the freezer. organizing the fridge and freezer is really important. And that was something that really changed things for me on my little journey with the food waste, was just having different different shelves in the fridge for different things, so you always know where everything is. Putting new things at the back and bringing the older stuff in the fridge forward, so you know that it's used first. All these little bits and pieces, and the same in the freezer. Keeping things organized will make it easy for you to know what's what. Labeling everything is really important for the freezer, particularly with dates and what's in there, because you're going to forget both of those
I know.
things.
I've so gone into the freezer to something that I thought was pasta sauce
Yeah.
and realised it was not, and had a dinner crisis.
So there's that, and there's also we've done a fair few workshops where we've been getting people's feedback, and we've got some great tips from people. And one of my favorites was actually freezing things in portions. I thought that was really great. Or writing how many portions were in each thing that you're freezing.
I do that religiously.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, like butter chicken, half a meal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so you know, right? And then you're going to use it, or else if you pull something out and it's covered in frost and you don't know what's there, chances are it's going to get wasted.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so fridge and freezer. So I guess we've kind of talked a little bit about the household and the choices that you can make to get to this point, but really want to emphasize that this is the most important part. Let's try not to create any unnecessary food waste. But if we do, which we're all invariably going to do, and I still do every day, and I'm sure it happens in your household,
Definitely.
then we want to dispose of it in the right way. And so this is where we talk about things like composting and worm farming and chickens, as Monica has put in the chat there. So it's good to hear that some people can hear us. But it's, as I mentioned at the start, any organic waste that ends up in landfill is going to release that methane, which is 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide in terms of warming the planet. So we really just want to make sure any waste that we do create doesn't go into the red bin, and it's super important. So the easiest way is just to have another bin, a bucket, or we've got little compost bins here that have like an odor thing on the top, which you might like for your house so that it doesn't smell. But if you have it in a place where it's near your bin, then you can put it straight in there instead of putting it in to the red bin. And then what you do with it after that is up to you. You might have room for a compost bin at home. Composting is a really simple process, something that anyone can really do. We've got lots of resources on our website, which is canberraenvironment.org, about composting and worm farming. We've got videos up there because we won't have time to get through all of how to do it today. But a compost is just simply a pile of greens and browns. Your greens are the food scraps. It's also your lawn clippings, anything that's recently alive.
I was going to say fresh waste.
Fresh waste, that's right. And so you want to mix that equally with carbon, which is the stuff that's been dead for a long time, I guess, the brown stuff that's further along in the decomposition process. And these things together will allow the food waste to just break down into soil in the ground, which hopefully most people know about by now, but we're going to keep talking about it until everyone has compost in their backyard. And the other two elements are air and water. So you've got greens, browns, air, and water. So the air is the oxygen that you get through by turning your compost, which you need to do maybe once a week or once a fortnight. And water is just about keeping it moist. And since we're talking about food scraps, most of your compost are going to be pretty moist anyway, because of the nature of the food scraps being quite moist. But if they're not, you need to add water to your compost to keep the whole system going. There's lots of problems that can happen with compost, but they're not problems, I guess, is the wrong word, because a compost is a continual process. It's never in its perfect state, really. You either need to add more browns or more greens at any given time. So if your compost is smelly, that means that you've got too much nitrogen, too many greens in there, and you can rectify that by adding more browns. Or if your compost is taking too long to break down, that's the opposite problem. You've got too much of the carbon materials and you need more greens. But again, this is all stuff that we have on the Canberra Environment Centre website, and stuff that you can find out about, and it's really worth looking into because it's really simple to do, and failing or thinking that you're failing once is no reason to stop, because we need to constantly
Beautiful. We might wrap up fairly
Yep.
bit so we have a chance for questions.
Beautiful.
Can I just notice Brooke Anderson's popped on there, freezing portions of condensed milk, tomato sauces and cream.
Brilliant.
Beautiful. And can you recommend a compost bin for the kitchen that doesn't leak bad smell?
Definitely. We've got a little tabletop one here at the centre. Oops, there you go, like that. They've got an air filter in the top. This one doesn't. We've got them over there. But they've got little filters that stop them smelling. Other tricks that I've heard from people are to freeze them, to freeze the scraps if you're collecting them before you put them in the compost bin. But the trick is just to regularly dispose of them, I guess. If you leave something on the kitchen bench for a week, it's going to start smelling.
Yeah, we toss ours every day. So
Yeah.
we just keep our scraps in an old ice cream bucket and
Yeah.
we give them to the chickens or take them down to the compost each day.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
And
Probably wash it out when it starts to smell.
wash it out when
Once
it
a
starts to smell. The other thing we didn't touch on is worm farms,
Yes.
which are another great option for people who don't have grass to put a compost bin on, whether it's a balcony or a courtyard. Worm farms do a similar thing. Not that hard to use, and you can find out more about them pretty easily all over the internet. But I would definitely say if you're not going to compost, start worm farming. And if you're not up to either of those things, there are other options. There's a great website called sharewaste.com. A kind of
They have an app actually.
they have an app.
Yeah.
So people who have extra scraps will give them to people who need extra scraps for feeding their animals or for composting for whatever reason. Really fantastic resource. And there's also
there's more than 50 places in Canberra who want to take your waste.
Yeah.
So don't be shy about jumping on that Share Waste app. If you can't compost at home, there's plenty of options there.
Yeah. And there's a great little startup in Canberra called Capital Scraps Composting as well, which is really about taking ownership of the issue and just everyone taking responsibility.
Oh, I didn't see the Share Waste. No, can't quite see it. That's all right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess, yeah, that brings us closer to the end, but I can keep talking.
I want to just give a chance for some questions. Yeah. So thank you so much, Ryan, and so insightful and really interesting to hear about the value chain and how that works. I'm really interested in your questions. So I'm wanting to know what's your top challenge with food scraps or food waste, sorry. So yeah, we've probably got time for a couple. And what's your top challenge with food waste in your life, in your world? Just knowing that, there are many seasons in life and, what might be a food waste challenge for me, trying to convince my children to portion control, it's not a challenge for other people,
Sure.
So really interested in any questions or sharing of what that top challenge is, and we'll try and work that out. Just thank you, Brooke, for sharing about the composting. I might, so my top challenge is probably portions with my children. I don't know.
Yep. I unfortunately don't have the answer for that one for you, but as we've learned, it's a work in progress, right?
Yeah.
And we're never going to be. We've missed a few questions there, haven't we?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So eggshells. I'd answer eggshells and
see if we can do these quickly.
Yeah, prawn shells together.
This is rapid fire. We've got 5 minutes to go.
Eggshells work well in the compost bin. Crushed up is better. Anything that's smaller will decompose quicker.
Beautiful.
Also great around vegetables.
And if you click answer live after that, done.
Done.
Okay, and then done.
Done.
Excellent. Any uses for prawn shells?
Chickens love it if you've got them.
I know.
Also, composting them is great. And that also comes under that kind of unavoidable food waste, because as long as you're not throwing out the whole prawn, then you've at least done something.
So compost or chickens. Okay.
Yep.
Answer live.
Answer live.
Done.
Done. How do you deal with meat? That's a tricky one. So you're not going to put that in your worm farm because worms don't really like meat. They're vegetarians and they can be a little bit fussy. I have a special compost for my hard stuff, the hard to break down, like meat, bones, that I'm not intending to make compost really quickly for my garden. It's just like a bin at the back of my yard that just slowly breaks down. I'm always adding a bit of carbon material to it, but the meat will break down. Again, smaller is better.
And chickens.
Chickens love meat.
They love all sorts of meat.
Yes, they do.
Every pretty sort of
If you ever seen them go for a mouse, then you know they're brutal.
They're brutal. All right.
What else have we
Can I
got?
put onions in my compost bin?
I'd say yes. They work just fine. Worms don't really like them in the worm farm, but in the compost bin, they're eventually going to break down. There's some things that will break down quicker than others, but that doesn't mean it won't happen eventually.
Beautiful. Answer live. Done. Sophie, another question from you. I want to try making vegetable stock with scraps, tops of carrot, potato peels. Is there any that I should use or avoid?
Use them all. Use everything. If you go into a commercial kitchen and see a professional chef cooking, he's got a big stock pot going with just everything in there.
Yeah.
And that's how you get that delicious flavour, really, is just not being picky. Save the bottom of your celery, freeze it, throw it in the stock, pretty much everything. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I reckon everything.
Anyone that's buying stock should try and make some for themselves because it's really much better.
I find it too hard. I'm so sorry.
To
Making
make
my own stock. I've tried a few times.
Okay, well, we
I'm
can
not
do
an expert.
another
I
workshop
need
on
a
that
training on
sometime. It's very simple. It's all about boiling it in water. And that's it.
Thank you. Well, look, that's just about all we've got time for. We'll just check there's no more questions on our rapid fire.
I think
we
I've got
haven't answered. Yes. All right. Look, thank you so much, Ryan. I just want to, from the bottom of our heart at Zero Waste Revolution, we've really appreciated your support for this whole event. So Ryan's the Centre Director, and we're actually coming to you for the whole festival from the Canberra Environment Centre. But that was just incredible. I feel like I've got something new I'm going to try.
Great.
The potatoes and the onions, and that will help, keep them both for longer. And I hope that you've enjoyed listening to, and that you've taken away, one thing that you'll do differently to help you reduce your food waste. Now we've got today's the second day of our Zero Waste Festival. We've got 4 more masterclasses on today. They're all free, they're all online. So please check them out. Feel free to register. We've got our next one coming up is how to recycle right. And then in the afternoon/evening, we've got 5 sustainable money saving secrets with Serena Bird. Then we've got a how to make an upcycle a little bit after that. And then our final one is for women, and it's on how to have no more bloody plastic, as in no more menstruation using plastic products. So we'll look at some real alternatives there as well. So thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you all with us. Please share, once the recording's up, feel free to share it with your friends. And yeah, we've really enjoyed your time, and we hope we've shown you some practical steps that you can take on your zero waste journey.